Hi, welcome back to Grains in Small Places. Today we're going to be making a apple dumpling fritter type thing. So a lot of you had been messaging me asking me for this recipe. Now, apple fritters can be made in many different ways, many different recipes. So there is a yeasted dough version where you can make it more like that fluffy donut where you have, it rise one time, you punch it down, you turn it into like a thick yeasted donut basically. And then there's another variation where you use like baking powder as your leavening agent, and that one is much quicker. So today I thought, with the yeasted dough, you could always just use my either everyday bread dough or the challah dough, something like that. Any of those doughs would make beautiful yeasted dough donuts. So today I wanted to show you just a quick, easy, get it ready, fry it up, serve it, ready to go. No cooling, no rising, just a little bit of a wait time, and it's ready on the table. So let's get started. So to start these apple fritters, you're going to need either 2 large apples or 4, in this case we have pretty small apples. So these are 4, we're using Honeycrisp apples, but you can use any crispy style apple. I mean, honestly, you can use any apple, but the crispier apples I think do a better job. So Honeycrisp or Granny Smith, even the Gala apples or Fuji, something like that. I think they just hold up better in the dough. So you want to make sure you peel those, which Matt is doing that for us today. It's super nice of him. So thanks, Matt, for doing that for us. So I really wanted to come up with this apple fritter recipe for something quick and easy to get on the table for dessert or breakfast, snack, whatever, because I know that I have a lot of yeasted dough recipes that require rise times and things like that, and it's sometimes just nice to get something out really quickly. But if you are looking for a nice yeasted donut, I do have a recipe for that. It's on my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net. It's actually my Boston cream donut. That is a yeasted donut. It's risen, it's filled. You can use that for just regular old glazed donuts, or you can use it for jelly filled or any of those filled donuts. So I will try to remember to put a link in the description box below for that recipe as well. I don't have a video on that yet, but if there's enough interest, then I can go ahead and make a video on that. And then we're going to take these apples and then dice them fairly small so that we can add them to our dough mixture. So if you're worried about your apples turning brown, then you can always do this step later, but I find that the dough comes together so quickly, I didn't have a problem with my apples turning brown. So we've peeled them, we've cored them, and now chopping them small and just putting them into a bowl to the side. And then we're going to be using my all-purpose flour blend, which I do have a recipe for that. I'll put a link to that in the description box below as well, along with my mixer, my mill, these grain bins, any of those things you can always find down in the description box below. So essentially my all-purpose flour blend is 1/3 of hard white, soft white, and kamut. So I'm doing about 60 grams of each of these grains. I like to weigh these out and then mill them, and then that way I know I have 180 grams of freshly milled flour after it's all said and done. And I'm going to take this over to my Nutrimill Harvest Grain Mill. And I do have a coupon code I can share with you. The coupon code is GRAINY, and I can put a link in the description box below. You can save $20 off your grain mill. They also have the classic grain mill and the Bosch mixers and the Nutrimill Artiste mixer there. I know these grain mills sell out often. They've been in and out of stock since basically Black Friday of 2023, but right now, as the time that I am editing this video, they still have several of the colors in stock. So you can head over there and grab yours if you're interested. We're going to use about 80 grams of whole milk. That's about 1/3 cup or so. And this amount may vary for you depending on, if it's really hot and humid in your area, you may want to use a little bit less. If it's dry in your area, you may need a little bit more. This will change even depending on the wheat berries and all of that. So to this milk, I'm going to add about 46 grams of applesauce. Now this is unsweetened applesauce with cinnamon in it. You can use plain unsweetened. You can even use sweetened. It'll just make your fritters a little bit sweeter. So whatever applesauce you have on hand, homemade, canned, whatever you want to do. So I'm also going to add 2 eggs to this. So we're just basically getting the wet ingredients all ready to go. So we can add that to the dry ingredients. You can do all of this while your mill is milling if you want, or do it afterwards, whatever is most convenient for you. Just gonna wash my hands real quick and give that a mix together, and then we're gonna grab our freshly milled flour. So again, this is my all-purpose flour blend mixture. You could use other things. I will put some alternatives in the recipe. So when you go to the recipe down in the notes section, it'll give you some other options of wheat varieties you can use. To that, we're going to add about 1/4 cup or 50 grams of sugar. You could also use honey if you prefer, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I really like to use this non-added aluminum baking powder. It does a great job. And then we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. If you like cinnamon, you can go heavy with the 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. If you're not a huge cinnamon fan, then you can always just do 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, but it just really takes it up another level, I think, to add the 2 teaspoons in there. It just matches with the apples perfectly. We're just going to give these dry ingredients just a little whisk together, and then we're going to just make a little well in the center of our dry ingredients and pour these wet ingredients right in and then mix that around. Want to mix it until it's combined and there's no dry flour left, but we also don't want to overmix this because we do have some hard wheat in here, which could develop gluten if we're mixing it too much, and then that will make it kind of a dense, heavy fritter. Then, after everything's mixed together, you can just put in your diced apples. Mix those throughout. Once that's ready to go, then it is ready to start the oil. I like to let my batter sit for about 15 minutes just to allow the fresh milled flour to start absorbing the moisture and to allow the bran to soften. So I'm just going to cover this and we'll prepare our oil. So depending on what kind of oil you want to use, you can use whatever high temperature frying oil you prefer. In this case, we used 100% peanut oil, and I used about 1.5 liters. Just make sure, obviously this amount is going to vary depending on what size your pan is. This is my 12-inch cast iron pan, and we filled it up about 1.5 to 2 inches of oil. So we're going to preheat that at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure that our oil is up to temperature before we fry anything. And here I'm showing you, I have this metal measuring cup, which is perfect for this application because I can dip out the exact amount that I want. So this is my 1/4 cup measuring cup, and I can dip it out and put it in the oil and not have to worry about it melting or having any issues with splatter or anything because it's a thick, heavy metal. I'll put those down in the description box below. Also, you want to make sure you prepare a baking sheet with paper towels on it so you have something to remove the donuts from when they're done frying. That way you have that ready to go. I like to use this digital thermometer. It's safe for high heat. It's a meat thermometer just to make sure that our oil is up to temperature. So we can just dip out our 1/4 cup of batter, put it right into this preheated oil, and then I just give it a little smush. I have a confession. I do not like deep frying things, like at all. I like eating fried food, but I do not like frying food. So I was really happy that Matt was willing to help us out with this recipe with the dicing of the apples and the frying. Frying does not scare him one bit. He doesn't have an issue with it at all. So thank you to Matt again for being willing to fry these for us. So once they're done, we're going to do about 2 minutes on one side, flip it over, do 2 minutes on the other side, and then pull them out. They should be a nice golden brown. If your oil is too hot, these will burn on the outside and be raw in the center. If your oil is too cold, then it will just keep absorbing a lot of the oil. So I really like to have that thermometer ready to go so I can check my oil. We don't want to overcrowd the pan because that can cause a dip in the temperature of our oil. So now that these are done frying, the paper towels allow the excess grease to drain, and then we can put these on a cooling rack to start cooling just a little bit. And you also want to make sure that you have your oil back up to temperature before you put your next batch in. So while those are cooling, I'm going to go ahead and make the glaze. So for the glaze, we're going to use about 2 cups of powdered sugar and about a quarter cup of whole milk, and then mix that together. Add about a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract to that for just a little bit of a flavor. And we want to make sure that this is a great consistency. So as I stir this around, I'm looking for it to stick to the back of my spoon. Well, I guess in this case, fork, but also to still drizzle off. So I want it thin enough to drizzle off, but not run off all completely. So if you need to adjust it a little bit, you can always thin it a little with a tiny bit more milk, or thicken it a little bit with some more powdered sugar. And now that we have the glaze ready to go and the donuts are all finished being fried, they're still warm. I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna just dip them in this glaze on one side and then dip them in the glaze on the other side so that they're completely covered in the glaze all around. Then we're gonna set these on a cooling rack over the paper towels. I find this is the easiest for, I guess, cleanup because it's going to drip off and drain off the donuts. So now that it goes on the parchment paper or paper towels underneath, you don't have to worry about that mess. So since these are warm, it'll look like the glaze is going on really heavily, but it starts to drain off and melt off as they go. And you can kind of see that as we go in the video here. And another great thing about these is they can still be served a little bit warm. We don't have to be so patient to wait really long for them. These were actually so light and airy. I almost was surprised that they weren't a yeast dough. The texture, the flavor, everything was spot on amazing. So I hope you'll give these a try, and I'll put a link to the recipe down in the description box below. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today while we made these apple fritters. This is all I have left. So if you want to find this recipe, you can get it on my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net. You can find this recipe, a whole bunch of other recipes, all dedicated to fresh milled flour. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And thanks for stopping by Grains and Small Places. Goodbye.